To begin.
Are you watching closely?
To begin.
Clytus, I'm bored.
How to start.
What plaything can you offer me today?
Welcome to the first syllable. I'm going to keep this episode kind of short because I just recorded 4 episodes of the Groundhog Day Project, reading 4 different entries of my blog, getting a little emotional at one of them. And one of the things I got emotional about was this note from my notes for last song of Whisper Blackbraid, which is a Guardia Basara story that I was planning to write back in, what year was that? 2013, I guess. 2014. That I was planning to write and that I still would like to write. It's about 2 brothers who, I forget the setup, but because of a curse, they, every 7 or 8 years, I forget the number, there was complicated math to it, switch from Earth to Basara, to Earth to Basara. And so, like, right as they're getting their life together in one place, they will be forced to suddenly be in the other. And though I had a few ideas of stories to tell about them, and I had a lot of detail about their lives in all of those different gaps and figured out what was going on in each of these sections, I was going to start with the last story of their lives, when they are old men and they have to deal with their lives as they know it maybe ending, and some murders that are going unsolved by this guy, Whisper Blackbraid, who is using Infinity Field to his advantage to commit murders outside the flow of regular time, so that even if they do catch him and stop him, that doesn't mean that his murder spree will end. There could still be more that he has done. I had a recent note where I was going to tie this story back to Odds from Four Finger Discount, in that she might be, as the judge, might be the person that Jason, one of the 2 brothers, would travel to go find, because they need someone who can tell them definitively whether or not there are more murders that have already been done in the future. If they do actually catch Whisper Blackbraid, does that mean it's over? And if not, does Whisper Blackbraid have a specific memory of the murders he is going to commit that they can mark down for someone else to try to prevent or deal with in the future? That would be part of the story, part of the plot, is tying Odds back into this other story about these other people. The thing I got emotional about is I wrote this thing when my wife and I were separated and potentially divorcing years ago. Well, a decade ago. And I was doing notes for this story and how it's basically about the end of these 2 men's lives. And there was this in a notebook. I think I figured out yesterday the theme for last song of Whisper Blackbraid. It's about letting go, moving on, when you know you have to, but can barely even bear the idea, let alone the reality of it. Those parents losing their children, Jason longing for the wife he hasn't seen in years, even as he has finally almost moved on to Rienne. 2 old people longing for comfort before they pass. And at the center, Quarrel, feeling that he has but a short time left with his wife, knowing he'll be gone soon and trying to do his job in the meantime, even when all he wants to do is lay in bed with Nickel, making the last days take as long as they can. So it's probably Quarrel who will die in this story, never having to leave Guardia again and be without his wife, while Jason survives to see Nakusa one more time, only to leave Rienne behind. The narrative may leave Nickel and Rienne behind in the end, but the air of sadness, of loss, will already be there. Perhaps Quarrel at least will try in some way to prepare Nickel for life without him. Maybe that's why he gets engrossed in his work, in solving the mystery of Whisper Blackbraid. Because the only alternative to staying with Nickel every moment of his last days with her is to distance himself, leave her alone to get used to his absence. And does she figure this out? She must know about the curse. He had to have told her about it in all their years together. So she'll realize, just as he can feel it in his bones, that he will be gone soon. Maybe there can even be a scene of her comforting Rienne in some way, a hopeful moment for these 2 old women soon to be alone. I don't think this is a short story at all, but maybe with all this melancholy it shouldn't linger so long as a novel either, or it might be too depressing. In other news, before I leave this brief episode, we'll deal with more later. No updates on death, because I haven't gotten back to that yet. I've been busy. But I think editing those last 3 episodes, I did take notes on changes to be made, characters to be combined, that kind of stuff. But also this past week, I finally got back to the Escalor, or under its new title, Out of the Lion's Den and Into the Fire. And I think the story is working better with a lot more detail and changes to the world and making it more complicated and deeper. And especially, there's this moment I haven't written yet, but I have it in my notes. It's coming up. That Journey's the main character. Journey is going to realize that there is a bigger picture she doesn't like anymore. The people of the lower Pavanshal are primarily Perowers, that is, they worship Gal Pero, which is sort of Guardia's version of Jesus Christ. Except Jesus Christ if he were a violent revolutionary. Sort of. I don't know how violent he was, but he was revolutionary. And I've talked before about everyone understands that Pero exists, Lyastrin Demes exists. The other gods are the forgotten gods. That some people are like, yeah, those exist, but who cares? No one pays much attention to them except for the people that are branded by them and given abilities from them, or who serve them in some specific way. And I think Journey's got to come to terms with that by expanding the world into having all of these gods, and some of them being the quote-unquote forgotten gods. It's gonna bother her that the Escalor, these dogs that show up and burn the Pavanshal every few decades, are bad. And they were made by Wisp-Agrath, the fire, the god of... Wait, Wisp is he the jailer? No, that's Nasal. What else is Wisp the god of? I forget now. But he's evil. He was, in the version I had before, Pero was the good god. Lyastrin Demes was really the god, and Pero was like this sort of mortal guy that people worshipped. But now he's more of a god, and Wisp-Agrath was like the devil. What would be the devil as you would think of it has been divided now between Wisp-Agrath, Nasal, and... I want to say there's a third one. Or different parts of what we would call the devil apply to them. Jumping in from editing, even though it isn't that important, the whole point to the setup with the 27 gods of Basara was that there wasn't a strict good and evil binary. But the one I was trying to think of here was Hathat, the Ghostmaker, because she is sort of the mother of what we would think of as demons. Not exactly evil, but close to it. I think there's even more of a thing where what we would think of as the devil is actually given to more than just these 3. Because Blind Mab is the god of chaos and coincidence. That chaos definitely fits what we would think of often as the devil. And then someone like Crave is the god of hunger. That can drive a person to do very bad things. Sort of like a lofted up one of Hathat's demons. So it's much more complicated than just a good and bad, or good and evil. But Wisp-Agrath is still sort of evil. And since I have this open, I'll tell you what I was trying to remember earlier. Wisp-Agrath is also called Fire, the Scarecrow. He is the jailer. I was confused on that one. He is the god of fire, the god of consequence, and the god of plots, as in, like, machinations and plans. Often meaning bad ones, vengeance, that kind of thing. Anyway, back to me, before. But the fact that Wisp-Agrath, this god that, as far as Journey knows, no one worships, no one adheres to as a religion or whatever, or a philosophy even, created these things that show up and destroy property and ruin lives and potentially hurt people and animals and kill them even. When she comes face to face with one, she realizes that she doesn't trust Pero, because Pero is not there to help her. She has to help herself. And I think the story is working really well with more detail, and I need to change a little bit in the opening paragraphs again. still, and I need to finish, because I think I did 2/3 of it in one sitting. I need to do the other third and make it work. This is a story, since I love spoilers on this podcast, it is a story that starts with essentially Mid-Spring Day. It's this festival where, 7 adolescent girls dance around a maypole festival, basically. Their equivalent of it. And are like matched up to boys for a dance, and by the end of the day, even though she hasn't even had her twice, which is like a bar mitzvah, or bat mitzvah, as it were, even though she hasn't had hers yet, she expects by the end of the day to be betrothed, or at least promised to be betrothed once her twice has come. And that doesn't sit well with her. She's kind of going along with it because she expects it. She's expected to. Same with she expects to grow up on, she's grown up on a farm. She expects to still be on a farm in the future. And then this is the day that essentially, I forget the opening line now, but it's something about this is the day she became a woman. She hasn't had her twice yet, but she essentially has her twice in the story because, like a bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah, when a kid has their twice, these parents, they recite the speech in the old words about becoming an adult. And she recites it all in context of the story in an interesting way. And by the end of the story, she is on her own, looking at the burned out remnants of the pavan shawl that she knows her parents will move back into and replant crops and keep their farm barely going. And she doesn't want to be any part of that anymore. And she knows she doesn't have to be. She's going to go do something else with her life. So it's like this starts as one sort of coming of age and turns into another one. Kind of switches genres in the middle of the story. And it was the first Guardia story I wrote. And that was when Guardia was much less complicated, because I didn't know how much I was going to write set there, or how much I wanted to, or how much of a complicated world I wanted it to be. And now I want it to just get more and more complicated. I don't know if I even want to use it for D&D anymore. I kind of do, but I kind of also want to write Daggers of Crosswater as a story, or as a novel, rather than let it be a D&D campaign, unless I knew for sure I could do it as like a Twitch stream campaign that someone would keep track of all the details for me, and it would have its own continuity and tie into other plots, but as its own novel, I think is how it has to work. I guess. It's all so weird. Trying to turn it into a D&D setting is what got me thinking enough to write, again, a novel set there, and thinking about writing more. And now I think I might take away the D&D part. And that's okay. Stories go as stories go. They change how they change. You just gotta live with it. I'm just happy to have notes on different stories and all these different things in my head. I am deliberately trying to keep myself from making too many plans, because that was my problem before, is I would always plan ahead and think about all these stories I could write, and I don't know how many I want to get ahead of myself. But I let myself get ahead a little bit. Thinking about Chase Two Rabbits, thinking about Fish Out of Water, and I forget the title of the other odds and kill story. And knowing that there's at least a fourth one, maybe more. Thinking about Last Song of Whisper Blackbraid, thinking about Song of Fell Far Away, thinking about The Man with the Holes in His Hands, thinking about the other short stories that I've written before that I need to rewrite. Eating Crow, Hindsight, Master Caker. Maybe finish Fishtail was a story I never finished. I'd have to go find the original notes for that one, though. And writing Daggers of Crosswater, which appropriately, I shouldn't say this, involves a time loop. I love spoilers. Involves a time loop and an assassination. And if it, as a D&D campaign, would have set up a potential larger campaign where the main characters are serving a guy that might just be the villain. There's multiple kinds of villains in Guardia, though. There's this larger story that is going on behind all of these other ones. During Four Finger Discount, Odds meets Malachi Ravid. He is, I forget what they call it, Allfather? Oh, no, he's not Allfather. He wants to be Allfather, which is like the Pope. He's the equivalent of like a bishop. He's Overfather, I think they call it. Essentially, he serves Pero. But he's a character from a novel I wrote back in 96. The novel is not very good. But I want to kind of take a few beats from that novel and turn it into a new one and a much more complex story, which in my head I keep comparing to in the Infinity War movie, where essentially our protagonist is the villain. And it is a story about Malachi Ravid realizing in his life on Earth, where he has become a priest, that he doesn't really buy into Christianity, in particular because he has memories of a childhood that he's only just starting to understand are real, where he is from Basara. And he realizes that their gods are real, and he wants to go back there. And it gets kind of complicated because he has to figure out how to go back there. And it's about this sort of man's falling from one religion while trying to embrace another in his obsession, and eventually getting there. By the time that would be a story, we'd already know he's there. We've seen him. Odds met him. He will be mentioned in Daggers of Crosswater. He might be mentioned in Chase 2 Rabbits. Not sure. And he is one of our potential villains in the larger picture. There's High King Absalom. There's Allfather, as he will be, eventually. Malachi Ravid. And a few others, including Whisper Blackbraid. Because they might all be, their machinations might be tied together. Or not. Depends on what I decide when I'm actually writing these things. But I hope to have the chance to write some of them. That alone's a good feeling. Even if I'm not writing right now. The fact that I want to is nice, because for a few years there I was not writing. I wrote basically every day from 1996 to, I'll say 2002. And then a few things after that, but it'd be off and on. I don't know what writing I'll get done in the summer, because I found out yesterday I have a summer class. Or is that something I found out this morning? No, I found that out this morning. I do have a summer class, and it's going to be early in the morning, so I might be tired. But maybe that's exactly what I need, and I get home from that class and sit down and write. Could be nice. Also got this podcast, Groundhog Day Project podcast. In theory, the show that used to be called 50v20 and is now probably called Bury Your Gays, the podcast that I do with my daughter. That one might be back in June. Additionally, I'm maybe helping her out with her musical that she wrote and is producing a few, I forget how many I think it's 2 weekends, 6 performances of that musical in June. And I might go be like assistant director for the last few weeks of rehearsals and stuff. I don't know. So June's going to be busy. Life is busy. But now it is about almost 7 p.m. Friday, May 10th, 2024. So if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, it's last week. Hello, future you. And I gotta go eat some dinner and maybe watch a movie or two tonight. I don't know. It just keeps going. And I thought this was going to be a short episode. Ha.
Cut. You're still here? It's over.
Stuff that dreams are made of.
It's a passport
Go home.
to another world.
Go.